Hi and welcome. It's the 15th annual year-end group and team programs call. I'm Jennifer Britton of Potentials Realized and groupcoachingessentials.com. Chances are you might have met me in an earlier call over the last decade and a half, or perhaps through one of my many books. I am the author of 5 books now. The latest one is going to be released actually tomorrow, December 14th, 2018. My first book came out about 10 years ago, 9 years ago to be exact, this December, called Effective Group Coaching. And that book has made its way through across the world. It is being used by coach training schools from across North America to Europe, to Africa, to Australia, and also Asia. It really is a pleasure to spend a few minutes with you. This is the 15th year-end celebration. And as I always go to prepare for these calls, I'm struck by just how much changes in our world and how much remains the same. So what I am still committed to, which is the same as my vision 15 years ago as I started these calls, was to provide resource-rich tools and a pause to allow practitioners like yourself to engage in better conversations and better learning experiences. In the last 14 years of my business, will turn into 15 in April of 2019, I've been very privileged to work with thousands of professionals from across our coaching industry, but also in the entrepreneurial sector and the leadership world. I am a coach, I'm also a trainer and a facilitator, and I love the fact that in different engagements, I'm able to blend the different skill sets that I bring. So a little bit about where we're going to go in the next 30 minutes. It really is about taking a look back at where you are and also where the industry is. I'm going to take a look back at the trends from 2018 around group and team programming, just as I did way back when in 2004. It's almost time perhaps for a compilation video. I'm also going to look forward to the 29 opportunities. And you might wonder, well, how does this connect with what you do? And so I'm an author, and as an author, I get to undertake research every day. Big part of my world of work, in addition to being a coach, is scanning the landscape for what's happening. And I really do enjoy that. So part of my highlights this year, it's really exciting because it's taken me outside my usual orbit. If you joined me last year, you would have noted that my 2017 book was called Effective Virtual Conversations. And a big part of my world of work for the last 3 decades has been operating in the virtual space. Earlier than 2004, when I established Potentials Realized, I worked for almost 15 years in the global sector, worked for the United Nations, worked with Canadian and British aid organizations, and I was based out of the Americas, out of Central and South America, the Caribbean, and for short stints out of Europe. Really have been fascinated my entire career since the late 1980s around how do we bring people together physically, virtually increasingly, to have very intensive experiences. And so that has really become a much greater voice in my work and my writing in the last 2 years. Last year with the release of Effective Virtual Conversations, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen. And I'm really excited because tomorrow's book coming out is called Plan, Do, Track. And it is going to be leveraging my midsummer book, the Coaching Business Builder Workbook and Planner, which came out in August of this year. It was really shaped by the dozens of hours, I would say actually thousands of hours of conversations that I've had with coaches and with others. And it really is an opportunity to be looking at, how do we expand the conversation space. So we've got other people coming in. I'm going to let them in as we go. And just want to say welcome to anyone who's joining. We are midstream, and I'm just going through some of the highlights of 2018. I'm Jennifer Britton, your host today. We are recording this, so if you don't want to be seen, please mute yourself, block yourself. I'm going to be up here on the screen. And just was saying, part of the highlights of this year really is a virtualization of so much. And as Plan, Do, Track comes out tomorrow, that is going to be geared for virtual professionals, virtual business owners, and also virtual team leaders. Some of the things that we've seen in recent years that have really infused our work as coaches, as learning professionals, thought it would be interesting to take a look back at what I talked about last year and the year before that. So just take a note of your screen. Last year I was mentioning with a lot of the work of our clients, things like agile, hacks, and sprints. micro-learning and brain-based learning. Certainly looking at the sphere of neuroscience, many of us, myself included, have been involved in this research over the years. I personally started my undergraduate work at McGill University 3 decades ago, was inspired as a Bachelor of Science student back in those days in psychology, looking at how do the brains operate. And certainly Montreal and McGill has been very well known for its research in the area of MRIs, etc. We are now seeing like this getting rolled out to all practitioners, to leaders, to team members, understanding like how do we create better conversations and better learning experiences. So these were some of the trends that we've seen in the last couple of weeks. And in the next few moments, I'm going to share some of the things that we're noticing this year as it relates to group and team programs. And just as I did way back when, and I've done every year since 2004, want to take a look at some of these macro trends that you may or may not be seeing. One of the things that has continued to happen in the learning field is just a diversification of so many different things. I'm going to get you to mute your line because somehow your line has stopped muting. There we go. And really in diversification, it really is an area where there can be so much fluidity. One of the interesting things I see here is that, core to this work though is trust. We need to make sure that there's enough trust in the environments that we are working within. So here are some of the 2018 trends, and I'd like you to think about if you're seeing these in your work right now. Things like micro-learning. Everything is getting squished, compressed. Our worlds of client, our worlds ourselves, even as business owners, is faster, quicker, and with less time available. So starting many, many years ago, we used to call this bite-sized learning, but micro-learning is a term that I think most client organizations are embracing. How do we condense things? How do we get things across rather than full-day training sessions or week-long training sessions? How do we do those in short minute windows? So if you're not yet doing micro-learning, this is definitely an area to be looking at. It's going hand in hand with some of the more on-demand approaches. On-demand learning in and of itself is a term that really gets labeled so many different things, from like a Teachable or a Kajabi video-based program to what we see internally in organizations around e-learning, SCORM-compliant e-learning programming. And as someone who's been developing these for the better part of 15 years under my own business, I'm really fascinated by how on-demand learning continues to change. It is a necessity, though, given the disruption and volatility that our clients are facing every day. Businesses dissolving on literally as people come to the office, changes globally, half a world away, that have immediate impact on individuals and also businesses. And I think what's really important in our work as learning professionals and coaches especially is that people are hungry for community, safe communities where they can bring their challenges as well as their opportunities, where they feel free to be able to be who they are and also be in conversation and connection with others. So I want to take us into some of these. I've talked a little bit about micro-learning. It's one of the topics we've been exploring at greater depth over at the Learning Lab and Design Studio in the last couple of years. And as I mentioned, it's really bite-sized learning. It can be, an audio tip. It could be a short 3 to 5 minute or 10-minute video tip. It could be something that's pushed out to employees or actually embraced and learned in those bite-sized pieces. So micro-learning is key, as is, as I said, the on-demand learning environment. And this, again, we may have people participating from the office, from home, during their commute on their phone. What you see here on the screen is an example of one of the programs I launched this year, the Coaching Biz Growth Lab. And why I enjoy it so much is because it really is there's on-demand elements where people can actually connect in, but there's also, we've got a mic again, it's come unmuted. We've also got elements of the program where we have got elements where it's not possible to be doing it on demand. We are doing live. So with on demand, think about what is feasible for you. Also take note of what is going to be moving things forward. And I would also say with On-Demand, we want to make sure that we are looking at how does disruption and volatility work? How are we interrupting? How are we getting disrupted? And how are we creating trust, safety, and connection? And with trust, safety, and connection, it's really key that we are creating that enabling environment where people are able to engage, people are able to connect onwards with others. What I've included here is just actually part of the bookmark. You can go and download this over at effectivevirtualconversations.com. I'm just going to take off my glasses for a moment. But in that book, I take a look at what are the different ways you can boost trust and connection in your virtual groups through pre-calls, through creating shared expectations, through breakouts, through other areas as well. So interruption is key, as is disruption and volatility. And ultimately, we really want to be building community. What are the things you're doing to boost community within your work? How are you integrating things like peer partners, and when I say peer partners, that might be group members who are meeting in between calls, session to session. Another element which a lot of coaches are embracing this year, of course, are community groups. And that may be a private or secret Facebook group that you host, or you might even be taking it off of Facebook, taking it into Mighty Networks, for example. We can also have use on Instagram. So part of what I think is challenging for a lot of learning professionals, content creative professionals, is how do we keep the conversation going? Whether it's live, whether it's on demand. Today's call is very much a live on demand. Most of you will be looking at this on demand. I did do a series of Facebook Live sessions earlier this year, but the challenge was getting the video clarity required. And depending on where you're calling in from, you might be able to stream it okay, but from an upload perspective, your broadband may not work. And so, internet accessibility also creates equities and inequities in the world. And part of what I think we do as coaches is bring people together. So that requires trust. And I think, certainly in my work as a coach trainer, in my work with national and global learning teams, this is something that I hear all the time, that trust is really such a critical issue. How do we build trust? What are the elements and the enablers and the derailers? And even technology may get in the way. If, we can't mute, if we need to, if we can't get on a line, that also builds into how does trust work? So these are the themes from this year. I think a continued theme, and it's shown up year after year after year, is a virtual and on-demand. So what does that look like? I think there's lots of pressure to virtualize. Not every coach is comfortable with this. One of the programs that I had approved for CCEs this year is the Virtual Facilitation Essentials. It's the newest member of the Essentials family. It's been running now for a couple of years, and it actually grew out of a 15-hour virtual train-the-trainer that I've been running for the last 5 years. So Virtual Facilitation Essentials, if you're interested and wanting more skills and experience with this, do check it out over at virtualfacilitationessentials.com. Big growth area in my business, and why my last two books are the Coaching Business Builder. I'll just grab a copy of them. That's here. And also Plan, Do, Track here, which is coming out tomorrow. These are planners. And I think, and you'll notice they're big planners. They're actually desk size analog planners. They are workbooks. And I think one of the big challenges for people today is we don't have time to stop and pause. We may be creating a lot of lists, but do we have time to execute? And so in the Coaching Business Builder, there's planning tools. There's also tracking tools, as I've been saying. I've had a lot of fun this fall being joined by virtual facilitators, trainers, leaders in the Plan, Do, Track programming. And it's a series of month-end reflections and monthly planning sessions. Jen C., a recent group member, said, taking these 4 hours for myself was such a gift. Everyone knew that I was committed to this, and they also knew they gave me the space to work hard on putting my calendar back together after what looked like an explosion in my life. I feel so much more at peace and able to keep all those plates spinning easier. So that's where we've been in 2018. In our next little block of